Yesterday we talked about the different types of wrong perception of the pain of this. On this pain, I mean, the yogi is carrying on. Then you try to note the pain with all this wrong perception. Then it can hinder the progress, such that, for example, like yogi tends like to use metta, uh, or you want to see the ending of a pain. Not that you want to get rid of it, but it's more like you want to see the ending of the pain, but you're not ready for it. Then it can create a lot of problems, physical problems to the body. Then we mentioned about if you want to really note the pain, the same principle of vipassana is being applied by paying attention to the object thoroughly. There's no other way. To pay attention to them carefully, to see the whole nature of the pain as it changes, as it grows, or the type of pain. Hard, soft, poking, very, very acute. Or and also when you see the pain, how it expands, how it getting stronger, getting difficult. Then also that time we come to the as if to a limit. We notice that the mind begins to fluctuate into thoughts, into thinking, into dislike, aversion, doubt. All these things has to be noted. You watch them. Sooner or later, as the mindfulness gets stronger, that you can able to sit with this pain for a longer period of time without that anger or that fear, doubt coming in. That means before that, the mind can actually able to notice the pain however it comes, in whatever form it comes. This is good. It's good that you have that skill. You have these skills that in the future retreats you still need to use this thing. You need to use this skill because you able to use it in the further retreats. You'll be wonderful. At least you know what to do. And also I mentioned about a little bit on the standing meditation. Still on this secondary object, like the standing meditation, we take notice of the whole standing position. Then this time, once in a while, we try to notice this standing position with more detailed manner. Scan it through from the head to the bottom to the feet for the first few times. Scan it through. Then after that, look for something that is clear. For example, the 2 feet that's touching on the floor. Perhaps those places are clear. Pay attention to them for a while. Note them as touching, 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 or pressure. Notice their, uh, notice their, all their sensation over there. And also notice if sometimes you stand there, you may feel some rising and falling that's taking place. So notice that rising and falling also. Or other sensation that comes up. So stand there for about 5 to 10 minutes if possible. Yeah. As long as your mind doesn't go into, your body doesn't shake or the body is still. And also my advice is that don't close the eyes. Sometimes you close the eyes, it can get a little bit dizzy. This is something on this. Now, Let us turn into the mind, to the mind or the heart, however you want to use it. In the beginning of the practice, if the mindfulness is not sufficient, if the mindfulness is not continuous, usually my advice is that don't touch on the mind yet. More or less that 80% of your time, or 80 to 90% of your sitting time or walking time, stay with the bodily objects. And that will be good for a faster development of the mindfulness, especially the mindfulness. Because mindfulness, the criteria for mindfulness is that you need that prominent, clear object. Although the mind is being, in the suttas, being discussed at length, sometimes places that I know of, or some meditation that I know of, they kind of like completely disregard the body. Then sometimes they give the reason is that all our actions, all our speech and all our thoughts all starts from the mind. Why want to deal with the body? The enlightenment also in the mind. Why deal with the body? Then sometimes with this so-called logic, then devotees or yogis, then they don't like this walking meditation or this, this kind of meditation that we go through the body. So they start off with the mind. The moment you start off with the mind and you try to be aware of the mind, first of all, if you're a beginner, I would say, I wouldn't say 100%, but maybe 98% of you were not able to achieve any kind of mindfulness. It's going to be the mind is going to be very fickle, very fast, subtle. Most of us, when we come into this meditation, first of all, the mind is so noisy. So they use the word disquiet. So restless and so much thinking and thoughts and emotions and fear and all kinds of things because the mind has not been trained. And yet, with all kinds of this, they want to start off with this mindfulness on the mind itself. So with that, a lot of times they will fail. Even they think that they are doing something. Not to say that it is totally not good. It is good for a certain part. Perhaps in the everyday life, it may be good. But if you want to have intensive development, deep penetration of the mind and body, it is always advisable to start off with the walking or sitting or on the body. For the mind, for the various emotions and various thoughts that comes up in everyday life, if you can able to notice these states of mind, various states of mind, and you take it with in a way like disconnected from yourself, kind of like you know that the anger arises, you know that greed arises, you know that the restless mind arises throughout the day when you're out there. It's good. Because if you can able to acknowledge or to be aware of these states of mind, actually it helps you to settle down. It gives you a better, clearer, more calm state of mind or your life. But when you're in a retreat, you cannot do like that. Yeah. So in a retreat, especially what we do over here, the intensive type of retreat, you really want to bring about that continuity of that mindfulness. So therefore, we start off with the body. Now, since after a number of days, after a number of days where if you really do this walking, sitting, so some degree of mindfulness already pick up. Yeah. Now, therefore, it will be good for us to take notice of the mind right now. Not all the time, but most of the time we still do on the body. But there will be some time, some of the sittings, part of the sitting, you have to take note of that restlessness, that thinking mind, and to also the drowsiness also. Yeah. Greed, desire, lust, or anger, or aversion, or doubt. All these type of states of mind, you have to take note of them. In the suttas, and this is called the Pancha Nivarana, the 5 hindrances. Although there are 5, but actually you have more than them. It's not just only these 5. Yeah. Because maybe like jealousy sometimes arises. It also falls under like ill will, the second one also. Yeah. Fear, when it arises, it also falls under ill will. Yeah. So there's a number of things that we can discuss at length. You want to talk about these 5 hindrances? You have to stay for another 10 days. I can talk about it, at length, deeper, but I can talk about it, sufficiently, maybe in a talk or two. Let's talk about this restless mind. And this is one of the most problematic state of mind or the hindrances that affecting us. Most of us actually. Here in the more of a Western countries, especially like going to Europe or even here in US, we'll see that most of the time we have to deal with this thinking mind. The thinking mind. So much thinking. It's more like a restless mind. The mind is without rest. Now, in our society, in a Western society, you are brought up to think. Everything has to be thought. Everything has to be judged. Has to have understanding. To have analyzing, investigating, which is good in a certain sense. The development of our society depending upon great thinkers and so on, which is good. But on the other hand, also, if you cannot able to stop those thinking, then you're going to fall into a lot of anxiety, fall into depression, and so on. And that is that the other part of it is getting worse in all over the world. Here in our modern society, we are fed with information from all kinds, always. Advertisement over here. In everywhere in the world, we pronounce advertisement. Advertisement. All right. Over here, all you see all advertisement. You see information, everything, everywhere to get your attention. So we read, we keep going on again and again daily. When you start working, or when you are young, you are taught to be like that. You are working to be like that. After you retire, similar. So it's like constant going. So going to be once in a while there's going to be a breakdown with this unstoppable thinking. Yeah, and with this, sometimes with people with too much thinking, cannot sleep, too much stress. So, but when it comes to vipassana, there are ways that we can learn to reduce the thoughts, reduce it at least for a period of time. Either they reduce it to become zero for a period of time, then that time you can able to develop something. The more that you can able to reduce or remove, to abandon this type of thoughts, then it will be very good for vipassana development. So how are we going to achieve that when our mind is so much thoughts? So a lot of to do also with how you live your life. And that factor will, if you change that part, next time when you come into the retreat, you find it is so much easier for you to meditate. So don't think that only in the retreat you want to do something, and then when you go out, no, if you change something there, it's going to be very useful. Not that you're going to go any less form of thinking, but actually the thinking, your planning and so on will be clearer, will be more precise. And you don't have to go round and round and round and round and round. Yeah. You can see your problems, you can solve your problems clearer, better. Now, when we want to deal with these states of mind, whether it is a wholesome mind or unwholesome mind, wholesome means it produces wholesome results in the future. Future means in this life or in the future life. That is to say, it gives rise to happiness. I'm not going to elaborate more on that because that one will go into like past, rebirth, and so on and so forth. Anyway, in a nutshell, wholesome thoughts, wholesome mental states give rise to happiness in this present life or in the future life. Whereas unwholesome mental states, it gives rise to suffering in this life and also in the future life. So, here in Vipassana, although we know which one is wholesome and which one is unwholesome, but the way of Vipassana deals with these states of mind is that whether it is wholesome or unwholesome, it also has to acknowledge them as they are. We acknowledge them as they are. This is the function of mindfulness, to able to identify it exactly. If there is a mindfulness arises, then the mindfulness itself know itself that the mindfulness has arisen. So right in the beginning of the day on the retreat, I mentioned every now and then we have to check whether you are mindful or not. Because here is to acknowledge whether there's actually mindfulness or there's not no mindfulness. Until you are so used to know what is mindfulness, then you don't have to ask on it again and again. So here is to help you to acknowledge it. Whether your mind throughout the meditation, you know that whether you are pay attention to your objects more detailedly, more carefully, more thoroughly, or you are just doing just a general mindfulness, then there are two different states of mind too. Yeah? So too when you comes to like the defilements, mental defilements, or the mental hindrances, so too the same strategy is to able to acknowledge them, and to in a way that you learn to face them. Even drowsiness, your dullness of your mind, we can turn those things into a meditation object. The restless mind that is so much, we also can turn into a meditation object. Your anger, your lust, everything, if you do it well, you can turn those things into a meditation object. But these objects are, this meditation object, it's actually, it's more difficult compared to rising and falling or sitting and so on. Bodily objects. These objects are finer, more subtle, more cunning, tricky, uh, and so on. It will kind of drag you and make you even do even more. So therefore, the acknowledgement part of the different hindrances of the mind will be crucial here. Now let's take a look at this restless mind. When we use the word restless, in the Pali terms, the word Pali, they use the word uddacha. Uddacha, if you literally translate into English, it means hovering above. It hovers. That means it cannot settle down. It kind of like on the top like that. So too, like for example, when you are a lot of thinking, you try to pay attention to your rising and falling. You cannot land. The mind cannot land on the rising and falling. It kind of like keep on going back and all that thing, hovering, yeah, floating above in that sense, which is, I mean, it's a very good analogy, you know. So, the restless mind is something like this. Sometimes it's being given as the is be given as the simile, like a restless mind is like ripples in the water. I think for y'all it's not ripple, it's more like waves. Tsunami. Because it never stops. There's so much, you see. So it give rise to that. It give that this one. So a quiet mind is like a very a water without all this, having all this ripple, without all the wind and so on. It's a very quiet that type, placid water, calm water. Yeah. So so this is the nature, is a simile of being given in the text. The you see, this restless mind in the in the deeper aspect of Abhidhamma, in a more deeper aspect of the teachings of the Buddha, it is mentioned that this restless mind, this restlessness, it comes in together with all our defilements. whatever defilements that you have, there will be restless mind. When you are angry, the mind also is restless. Anger is one thing, restless mind is another thing, but they are mixed together. Yeah? So too, when you are having lust or having desire, attachment, so too the same thing. There's a lot of thinking, there's a lot of restless mind, also there's a lot of desire happening inside there. So it comes both. Yeah. Even when you are drowsy, although when you are drowsy, it is not that clear, but sometimes once in a while you may notice that there is kind of like daydreaming may happen even you are sitting there, but you're dull. Uh, mm. So too with all kinds of forms of defilements. The restless mind, that's why we call it the universal defilement. Universal. And other times, the restless mind comes only on its own, without for example, without the desire, without all these things, it's just restless. Huh? In the five hindrances, the restless mind and the worry mind, or even the regret mind, yeah, both of them categorize in the same category, the fourth category of the five hindrances. Yeah. They come together. The reason that they come together because, you know, sometimes you see when you meditate, sometimes you notice that the stories and all the contents that come in, while there's so many thoughts, sometimes the thoughts are very random. You can't even remember what you're thinking about. Sometimes here a little bit, there a little bit, there's one a little bit, that one a little bit. After that, 1 hour over, I know I have a lot of thinking, but I do not know what I'm thinking about. You can't remember. But there's a lot of thinking. There's sometimes restless mind. Sometimes the restless mind comes in a single story, a single theme, like for example that there is a um, thought about the past, and that thought about the past, you keep going round and round and round and round and round and round and round. You try to find solution, you try to thinking that you should have done this, you should not have done that, you go round and round and round in a single story. So the mind is just going on in that way. So here the restless mind, the worry mind, in a way we can discuss of them together. So this is the kind of like their characteristic. Yeah? The mind is very not calm. The mind is a lot of thoughts that's going on there, one after another, after another, after another, after another. A normal thinking mind and a restless mind, there has a two different thing. Yeah. You see, the Buddha, which is free from all the restless mind, he still has thinking mind. Thinking is not like your thinking in the sense that when you start thinking, it cannot stop. It go into restless mind. For the Arahants or the Buddha in that sense, when they need to think, they can think and they can plan too where they want to go, what they want to do, how are they going to deliver the Dhamma talk. Yes, they still got thinking, not that they don't have. If they don't have, then the Buddha cannot function. You cannot give a Dhamma, you cannot give a talk. So you cannot function as a human being. So he still has thinking, but he doesn't have that defilement of the restless mind. So therefore, the normal thinking and the restless mind, they are in a way, although they are connected, but they are two different things. One is for you to function normally, the other one has gone into a mental defilement. Uh, and we don't see that as a defilement because it is so, it's so normal to us. We don't see that as a defilement. Uh, that's why it can lead to all kinds of mental and physical problem, even in this very life itself. Uh, so, so therefore, understanding of these two, understanding of these two, it is important because one of the reason I have to bring this thing up is because sometimes yogis have a tendency thinking or have the wrong understanding is that if there is a single thinking arises, that means the mind is already default. It's not a good meditation. Yeah. They want everything to be perfect. And that is another problem. They want to watch the rising and falling, let's say, rising, falling, rising, falling. They don't even want one single thinking arise. If they one single thinking arise, tainted. But it's not. It is not tainted. Yeah. It's just that that kind of yogi becomes too obsessed with everything must not have everything you must do it with zero thinking because they think that or they have an idea that every single small little thinking it's restless mind. They overshoot the whole thing, they overinterpret the whole dhamma itself. Uh, so one has to be careful. If there usually normally my instruction in the beginning, if there is a, let's say you're walking and you're walking and then the one or two thoughts arises and it doesn't disturb the lifting, pushing, dropping, that time that means it comes, it goes. You walk for a while and then one or two thoughts come in. Most of the time you are noticing the movement of the steps. Now if you're able to do that, then you don't have to stop because these thoughts are not disturbing you. You're still noting, and yet at the same time, you also aware that these thoughts are arising, and by the time you're aware of it, it's already gone. So well and good if this type of thoughts is happening. Huh? The other thoughts, the other type is that when you're walking, and then the thinking is not stopping. While you're walking, it's keep on carry on. Then that time, it will be good for you to stop for a while. Then the main object right now will be the restless mind. And then you think, then thinking, planning, memory. And uh, until it kind of like settle. Then you start again, the walking. Uh, uh, so, other words, if it doesn't disturb you, you don't have to really stop. Because sometimes overzealous yogi, every small little thoughts arises, they already stop. Then they are not going to reach the end now. Because there are so many thoughts that's coming up, they are not going to reach the end of the lane. So you don't have to, if you have to feel it yourself. Now, this restless mind and all forms of defilements, and these hindrances, the way of noticing these hindrances is to note them until they disappear. Not the pain. Pain is not a mental hindrance. It's the desire or the anger that is the hindrance, and that has to be noted until it disappears. The only thing in the whole vipassana practice that any form of defilements, if you able to catch it, you catch it and you note it until it disappears. You try to watch the rising and falling to wait until it disappears. That is wrong. You wait for the pain to make it disappear. That is also wrong. These objects, it will change. You don't, because it's not a defilement. Yeah. You know the itchiness. You want it to disappear because it's very itchy. But the problem is the itchiness is not the problem. The problem is your thinking and your aversion. Because you may start thinking that maybe mosquito, if they bite me, then I'm going to get malaria, dengue, if you're in Malaysia. Then you will start thinking all kinds of things. And with that, together with the aversion towards it, then you want to get rid of the itchiness. But you forget that the culprit actually now is the thinking and also the aversion. So to here is only in the topic of 5 hindrances. You note them until it disappears. Yeah. Other job, other thing is that you note them, you see them as they really are. Here, when you come into the hindrances, including the restless mind, is that before it disappear, you also have to see their characteristic. You have to watch and notice how they behave, what pattern, what changes is going on inside there. Until the mindfulness takes over the mind, then these hindrances slowly and it will fade away. So what can we do with this restless mind? Now let's say you sit down there. After 10 or 15 minutes, then a lot of thinking rises. You cannot handle the rising and falling or the sensation anymore. Pain is not there yet. Because you see, if the pain is strong, it's a very good friend for you. The restless mind is no more there. Because your mind is still holding on and watching the pain, which is in a way good. Sometimes the rising and falling, they are not that clear. So very easily for the mind, for the restless mind, the thinking mind comes in. For during in the walking, you notice that the walking also is less thinking compared to the sitting. Why? Because the object of the walking are strong, prominent, clear. Sitting part is where, especially for beginners, this is the problem. The restless mind is one of the biggest problem. First few days, it's more like there's a lot of drowsiness, but after that past few days and you continue on until towards the end of retreat, normally is where the restless mind, a lot of thinking mind is happening. So now let's say you sit down there and these thoughts arises coming in. There are a few things when we want to deal with this restless mind. A few things. And sometimes the way of how we deal from one hindrance to another hindrance are quite different and can be totally opposite. Restless mind is that when it arises, for you to able to notice them is first of all, you must not fall into their story. that that is the single most important thing in the beginning itself. If you are already in the planning, in the story, in the content, in the memory, in the history of it, then the mindfulness is totally cut off. So again and again, you have to pull out. Somewhere in the middle, or maybe 10 minutes or 15 minutes later, if you have to try and pull the mind out. But even when you pull the mind out, the story still continues. It doesn't stop yet for many of us. So that time too, you have to be patient. So what can we do? Here, the moment that we can catch hold of it. So the first thing is that you must have some degree of mindfulness to acknowledge that it's already there. The first thing is to acknowledge that it's already there. That means you must not fall into its content in story and so on. Even you see faces of people, even you see the face of yourself, as if like there's a mirror image of your face right in front of you, or your person, your body is there. This one you must learn to disconnect that all these things are just mental images or mental thoughts or mental statement. Whichever, if you don't come out of it, we cannot go on anymore. Well, so let's say once the moment that you come out of it, then in other words, there's some degree of mindfulness is already aware of what is going on. Already aware of what is going on. Beginners, especially when we are in the beginning stage of development, you have to make an effort to pull out. But for more advanced meditator, and that can be a slightly different. Sometimes they fall into the thinking, but because of regular, continuous practice, the mindfulness as if like it's automatically jump in and cut off the thing without you making that effort. Isn't it nice? And it can be done. And it can be done. Sometimes you meditate, kind of totally forgot about it, then mindfulness kicks in. Yeah. And it just cut off the whole then more or less like you kind of like, hey, kind of like you're awakened again. Yeah. But in the beginning part, you don't expect that to happen yet. Maybe rare occasion, perhaps. But nevertheless, you have to make that effort to come out from that story. That means once the moment you come out, there's some degree of mindfulness is there, which is wonderful. Then the next thing, once you're able to catch hold of it, then here you begin to recognize them, and at the same time, it would be good that you put a label there. Not a label, you put labeling there. You can notice as thinking, planning, or history, memory. Sometimes, some teachers says that if you so happen to see yourself running inside there, then you can note running. Yeah, something like that. After all, labeling is just concept. But it helps to direct the mind towards it. If some there are teachers who mention that if we use the word like hindrances, like restless mind, then sometimes it get the sense of the word itself connotes or connected to some mental defilements. Then the mind tends to you kind of like put it a little bit further. Sometimes it says that it's easier for you to disconnect from the restless mind. because you see this restless mind, or you see it as something which is unwholesome, something that is something that you understand of this thing as unwholesome. So it's easier for you to disconnect from it. Yeah. Sometimes you're not thinking, it doesn't make any much effect yet. Something that you have to see that this thinking mind, this restless mind, is a flaw, is a defilement. Then the mind drops it much faster. Yeah. Now, once you're able to recognize it, then the next thing is also really important. Acceptance of it. Acceptance of it. Now, you see, sometimes this restless mind, when it becomes too many times, you get very frustrated with the sitting. Just now was so much thinking. Now I'm sitting again. When you're going to stop? You will keep on coming. So, in other words, the frustration is coming up. In other words, the aversion towards the restless mind is already arisen, but we don't realize it. So much so that sometimes yogis, they cannot accept those things. What they did is that they begin to forcefully suppress them, and that becomes a big problem. Yeah? They forcefully suppress them. They say, "No, I'm not going to think this. No, no." You like you put a lid onto it and you sit on it. It's like the steam is getting and then one of these days you're gonna implode inside there. Or explode, whichever you want to call it. And that can be a problem. One of the things that people don't realize is that you cannot overcome one defilement with another defilement. You cannot overcome the restless mind with your dislike there. Although this time you're forcing it, you press on it, you don't want it to come. No, I'm not. No, it's not that. If you do like that, there's going to be a lot of tension is going to build up. But once the whole lid explode, you find that the mind is going into much more thinking, and that time your meditation is going to have problem. And it can last, sometimes the restless mind can last for hours. Can last for hours, keep going and going. Every sitting is so difficult to sit. So don't try to suppress it with all kinds of defilements. It's more like when this thing arises, your job is to accept it in a way that you don't wish it to go away and you don't wish it to stay. Yeah? Although earlier on I said that finally you note them so that they fade away, but not with the way of suppressing them, but here in the way of building up that mindfulness and let the mindfulness overcome the defilements. That means you build up a wholesome state of mind to overcome an unwholesome state of mind. So acceptance is going to be very important. Acceptance does not mean that you just don't care and don't bother. Some people think that you want to think, think, just carry on. Finally, the thinking will be over. So you let it think, That is not the way also. Yeah. When it comes to sleepiness, drowsiness, if you were to accept the sleepiness, then don't do anything. Then what are you going to do? What happened? You must well put a bed here. No, acceptance. That is not the way. Acceptance here is mean that you kind of like aware of it. You're aware of it. You're neither pushing it away, neither welcoming it, but you kind of like you contain it. It's still there, but you kind of like you put a fence there and you contain it. You acknowledge it's there. You acknowledge it. That means you have to do something about it. Yeah. Yeah. So that is important. Yeah. Sometimes there are yogis, when it comes to this acceptance thing, to them it's very difficult because of sometimes their ego is quite strong, their pride. Yeah. Sometimes you, in the interview, some yogis in other place, some place, once in a while, you ask them, is there any thinking? No, no thinking at all. Wow. I kind of like I know what's going on with you, Let you speak first. Then after that, they pour out. Then there are parts, of course, there's always thinking. Sometimes they don't want to acknowledge that they are thinking because they think that they already meditate for 20 years. I've already meditated for so long. How come I must be a pro? And yet, the thinking comes in. I'm not going to acknowledge it. In other words, the pride is there. Yeah. Anyway, so acceptance. Acceptance is another aspect of mindfulness. You kind of like really acknowledge the thing is there without pushing it away, without uh, without trying to suppress it, or welcoming it too. When you say welcoming, you see your thinking can be very enticing, and it really draws you in, especially you have problems to solve. You have problems to solve. You have all kinds of plans. Perhaps sometimes your working life, and you have something hanging there. And when you come into this meditation, all the solution and everything is in front of you. You don't think you want to go inside there. You will. You want to. It kind of entice you to go in. So here, a lot of times you have to pull back. Don't get fall into it. In the past, there was a yogi in Malaysia, and he's supposed to give a speech after a retreat, because he was working in a company, a corporate, something like that. And then, while meditating, he thought of all the speech coming up suddenly, and then he opened up his notebook. He's like write down, and then he closed back again, and then meditate. Wow! Then even better, he canceled the other one. Then he write down for the. I said, it will never end. You see, you get so easily enticed into all these thoughts. It will pull you in, because why? Because all our lives we are we we take pride in our intellectual prowess or intellectual capacity that we have. We take we don't realize that we crave for these thoughts, this planning and so on. We don't realize it that we are holding on to our thoughts and to our ideas. Yeah. If you don't realize that how we hold on to our idea, next time you go into a meeting, you present your idea and people don't like your idea, how do you feel? It's exactly because you're holding on to your thoughts. We don't realize it while we are processing those thoughts. The more that we process, the more that we hold on, and we don't realize it strongly, actually. Mm. Once in a while, even in a temple meeting, You're supposed to be calm, and you're supposed to be cordial, but when it comes into meeting, all their demons come out. Not only in the corporate situation, but in the temple itself. I've seen, the anger that arises, and they're throwing verbal abuse to each other, while me and, sorry to say, with Saidao Tuzana, in the TMC, both of you are sitting together, and here in front of all this group of people, wow. And Saidao and I were looking at each other. I just give up. Anyway, this this state of mind, this restless mind, as I said, we hold on to it. So, in other words, be careful while we are meditating. All these thoughts that we arises, don't attach to this style of thoughts. Put it aside. Yeah. You know that it's there, but don't hold on to it. Don't proliferate on it. Don't proliferate. The more that you proliferate, it's going to wreck your meditation. So don't feed it. Don't feed it with any more thoughts. Try to pull out from it as best as you can. Occasionally you'll fall into it, but nevertheless, make the effort to pull out from it. You learn this skill. Next time, you will see that it's so much easier. Any thought that comes in, you're not drawn into it. Not that much. Once in a while, yes, perhaps, but not as frequent as in the past. So this is one thing, learning to accept the thoughts as they are. Now, the next step is overcoming. Overcoming this restless mind. Overcoming the restless mind, you see, you need mindfulness. But this type of mindfulness, it comes with another factor. A calm mindfulness. Not the active mindfulness. Whereas you are sleepy, drowsy, then it has to be that active mindfulness. If you are beginning in your practice, it will be good to have that active mindfulness in order to build up that momentum. But there'll become to a time when you, after a number of days, sometimes the mind becomes too energetic, and too energetic, it goes into a lot of thinking mind. And therefore, you need to have that calm mindfulness. So how do you bring about that calm state of mindfulness, of clear awareness? So what you can do is this. A number of ways that we can talk about. Now, one of the things is that in the way of Vipassana is we confront it directly. That is to say, when the restless mind there and it's changing, it keep on from one story to another story to another story to another story. What you do is that, as if like you sit down, relax, noticing it, while you label it with a softer tone. Meaning that you label it slightly slower than before, than all the rest of your noting. More like restless, 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 or thinking, 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 thinking. While you are doing it, the process of the thoughts are moving quite fast. You still watch, you still go on, but here you induce mindfulness with a calm mindfulness to notice what is going on there. While you are noticing it, you have to be patient. However the thoughts go through, be gentle on this part, on the noting part. And this again is a training. Take notice of it, kind of planning, or the memory comes in, memory, 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 memory. Mm. So this is one way until you watch them until kind of like it fades away. If during this time, let's say while the memory comes in, and let's say the anger also arises during that time together with that memory. Now here, if the anger becomes more prominent than the thoughts, then what you do is that you notice the anger. Angry, 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 angry. Because anger during that time also is a very fiery, very restless inside the mind. So again here, notice it a little bit more calm. At the same time, you still watch what is going on with the thoughts as they pass one after another. So sometimes you sit there as if like these thoughts as like a pieces of thoughts are passing through. You do not know what is it, but it kind of like pass through. Let it pass through until it the momentum of those thoughts starts to fade. And sometimes it fades until it totally disappears. Sometimes it does not really disappear. It may be like going to a tail end, but it doesn't want to completely go zero. Other words, they are not that prominent anymore. So they are not prominent anymore. You go back to your primary object or go to a pain or something that is able to hold you or anchor you back to the body. Hmm? So this is one way of how we learn to deal with the restless mind. So tomorrow we're going to share further on basic on this thing. Tomorrow, for you to practice, and you try to do this. Yeah. Walking also the same thing. While you're doing the walking, if let's say the restless mind arises, then stop for a while. Restless, 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 restless. Don't fight it, don't suppress it, just be mindful of it as it passes one after another. Can do that? Try. Yeah. Okay, we'll stop here. We'll continue tomorrow.